Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. Monday, so I'm at my house and I'm filming another video for y'all on a different technique to help you out with. Today I thought we would look at the pinhole cast on. So what that is, if you want to start with a really tight circle and expand out from it, it's a technique that's often used in crochet. It's magic ring, it's called in crochet, and I've already done a video on magic ring. There is indeed something similar to that in knitting. If you want to start, like you're making Christmas balls, I was making snowmen recently. I think I'm going to start making some hats for our knit white squirrels that are in our front window display, using this start from the top and go down. And so I need something that's going to be very tight. And if you take a look, I mean, it's fiddly. Once you get it on there, it's super fiddly. But if you take a look, the very center of this, right in there, there's no gaps, there's no hole. And that's been made from pulling this really tight. So we're gonna start with a larger ring and tighten it up. And I will show you the way I just recently learned to do the pinhole cast on. We're going to draw it and demonstrate it. So let's get to it. So the pinhole cast on in knitting is just as the name implies. The opening when you're done will be as small as a pinhole. And it is very similar to the magic ring use at the beginning of a crochet piece when you want everything to expand from really small out. So we'll be casting on the loops onto the needle through a big ring and then distributing them once they're all cast on onto whatever small circumference knitting method you use. I like double point needles for this. You could do magic loop or 2 circulars if you prefer, and then pulling it up tight. So we're starting with a big space to cast on and pulling it up tight. Here are the main steps for that. We're going to make a ring, and then the steps that you're going to repeat, they're these 4 right here. You're going to put your right needle into the ring just like you would a stitch, but think of it as a really big stitch. You're going to yarn over. This YO means yarn over. And it's a yarn over in a knitting sense, in that you're going to wrap your needle counterclockwise and pull a loop back up. You're going to yarn over that same needle again. And you're going to pull the first loop over the second. It's going to resemble a bind off. Every time you do this, you're actually going to be adding a stitch though. There are 2 yarn overs involved and 1 bind off involved for each stitch that you're adding. So repeat steps 1 through 4 for the desired number of stitches. Then you can distribute these stitches evenly over your small circumference knitting method and pull the ring tight and get ready to go. So let's see what that looks like in pictures. Let's see what we can demonstrate in these pictures and color code to help it all make sense. So here I have my ring, very loose, big ring. Step 1 is going to be to put the right needle into the ring. So this guy, we're going to stick from front to back into that ring. Then step B, we're going to yarn over counterclockwise. That is what this is. The needle is in there and the yarn has been wrapped counterclockwise. And let's start color coding these. I'm going to make my yarn over orange. Next, we want to pull that loop back up to the front. You can think about that as how you would I know there's not another needle involved. You can always use another needle if it helps, but you want to duck that yarn over back to the front, pull it back to the front, just like finishing a knit stitch. So this picture, I have ducked that yarn over back to the front. So here is my orange yarn over that I just did, that counterclockwise wrap. It's been pulled back to the front of the ring. Next, you want to yarn over again. And this is the same direction you did the first yarn over, the other side of the ring. So we have the yarn over that we've pulled up through the ring. And we have our new yarn over, or wrap, however you like to talk about it. Now the next thing that is going to happen is you're going to pull the first one over the second and off the needle like a bind off. This is what secures your stitch in place. If you're curious, our first yarn over is now under like a knit stitch. That's our bind off that we just did. And our second is what stays on the needle. If you repeat steps A through E until you have the right number of stitches that you need, in this case, we have 6. Here's that first one. If I make them all different colors, I'm not going to reuse the orange again though, because he was part of our process. Technically, if you're wondering, he's down here. All the first pull-ups are going to be down below. And the second pull-ups of each time you're repeating the process end up high. So now we've got all of our stitches. Distribute them. See, I'm using double points, my little crookedly drawn double points down here. Distribute them to an even number of double points, 3 or 4. And then we're going to pull, so the pinhole is all that's left. If you pull on the tail, you'll be able to pull this up super tight and start knitting in the round. If you tried to pull it tight while they were all still on one needle, you wouldn't get it tight enough. They have to be distributed onto your multiple needles, whether that's the 2 circulars or the double points or what have you, to be able to pull it super, super tight. Now you can get your needles all straightened out. It'll be really finicky in the beginning and want to twist around. Keep them as straight as you can and start knitting in a circle. And often this leads to increases, things like that. So here we go doing this with actual yarn. So if you're used to crochet, you can start this a different way. You can be very close to how you start a crochet magic ring, but for knitting, I'm just going to instruct you to hold the tail, wrap around, and then if we take our hand out, we have a loop, and we might have 2 strands up at the top here. I would grab a second needle if you can hold it all, because he'll be helpful to bind off. But we're going to put our right needle under both strands of this loop that we've made. And then if you're an English style knitter, grab the yarn, wrap around, just like a knit stitch, and duck the needle back under this loop to the front. That might feel really weird, but it is very similar to finishing a knit stitch, just the loop is really big instead of a small one over on this needle. Now we're going to wrap just the needle, ignoring the loop underneath for a minute, and we're going to pull the loop over the wrap we just made. This can sometimes feel like a bind off. We're going to pull that over and drop it off. And see how that secures a loop on our needle. Now we're going to go into the ring again, just kind of under from front to back. Wrap around or yarn over. Duck that back under to the front. Do a wrap around. I know if this feels like it's getting all wonky, just try to keep it under your needle. Do another yarn over of your needle and pull that loop over your yarn over. I've got 2 now. I duck into the ring, yarn over, pull it back up to the front, yarn over, pull that first yarn over that you did into the ring over the single yarn over around your needle. I've got 3. I'm going to try to go for 6. You can do as many as you want into here. Just the fewer you do, the tighter you can pull this ring in the end. So again, I'm going to go into, yarn over the needle, duck back under the ring to pull the yarn over to the front, yarn over just the needle, and pull the yarn over that you pulled from the other side of the ring over that last yarn over. So that was all done with English style holding. Let me get things held like you would if you're continental, but it's much the same. I'm going to keep this needle ready here in case for the bind off. I'm going to duck under the ring and I'm going to pick my yarn. It's still the same direction. It's still a wrap, but I'm doing it with my needle and pull it under to the front. Yarn over my needle and pull what I just ducked under the ring over that last yarn over I just did. I've got 4. Let me do a couple more continental wise. I'm going to duck through the center of the ring, pick a loop and pull it back to the front, yarn over my needle. I'm not as deft with continental holding, but I'm going to pull the first yarn over the second I just made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got my 6. So I've got my ring. If I can pull this yarn out of the way. I've got my ring. I have my 6 stitches. I have my tail. Now, if I tried to pull this tight right now, it would pull as a straight line. I wouldn't get my pinhole. The way I'm going to get my pinhole is, I could have done this from the other end. It's personal habit. I slide to the beginning of when I cast on, and I'm going to distribute these onto 3 different needles. So I've got 2 and 4. I'm going to grab another one of my double points. I'm going to slide. This might stay in, it might not. I'm going to let it hang. Great, it stayed in. If not, try to hang on to them all. I'm going to slide 2 more. And sliding stitches, slipping stitches, I'm not twisting them. I'm putting my needle in purlwise. Now I have, like my drawing, I've got my horseshoe of my 3 needles, and I've got a big loop here. And I'm going to try to find my tail. There's my tail. And I'm going to pull on it. And if there's resistance, it could be that there's a strand caught on a needle, but little bit of resistance, not a big deal. A whole lot of resistance, maybe redo it. But I'm going to keep pulling until this is super tight as I can make it. At this point, if anything messed up, I have to take my needles out and start again. But now the center of this cast on, there might be some loose loops, but the center of this cast on is my little pinhole. So now I'm going to flip this over so I can start knitting. And remember I said it would be wobbly and crazy? So the biggest thing is I don't want to knit with my tail. So I'm moving that out of the way. My yarn is attached to this needle. If I want to keep knitting in a circle, I need to move to the next needle. You can rearrange these however you like, but I've got 1, 2, and 3. The yarn's hanging off needle 3. I need to move to the next loop in the circle. which is over here. And I'm going to move this needle underneath everything. I know that looks like a hot, crazy mess. As best you can, straighten things out. Once you start, those are my next 2 stitches, and then I'm going to pivot to the next one. This is very hard to capture on film accurately, but once you start knitting in a circle and you start doing your increases, this will get easier to hold and work with. So even just knitting this first round, it's a little less fiddly, but it's still there. So thanks for joining me for the pinhole cast on. Once you get it onto all of those needles, it's a little bit finicky. These all want to go all over the place, but you tell them who's boss. You can do it. Take your time and have fun with it. I always like to end with a few sign-off words, but also just to remind you, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. You can also support us over on Patreon. There are memberships on this channel as well. Subscription, though, to subscribe to the channel is free. To give us a thumbs up or leave a comment is also free. We appreciate everyone who watches and tries these out and learns from them. And we just love our Sun Dragon community. So if you can, share this with others or share another video from this channel with other people. Help our community grow even more. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, baby. You like the sun? Yeah.